While me and Winn-Dixie walked home, I told him how I got my name, and I told him how I had just moved to Naomi. I also told him about the preacher and how he was a good man, even if he was too distracted with sermons and prayers and suffering people to go to the grocery store. But you know what I told Winn-Dixie? You're a suffering dog, so maybe he will take to you right away. Maybe he'll let me keep you. Winn-Dixie up at me and wagged his tail. He was kind of limping, like something was wrong with one of his legs, and I have to admit, he stunk bad. He was an ugly dog, but already I loved him with all my heart. When we got to the Friendly Corners trailer park, I told Winn-Dixie that he had to behave right and be quiet because this was an all-adult trailer park, and the only reason I got to live in it because the preacher was a preacher, and I was a good, quiet kid, and I was what the Friendly Corner trailer park manager, Mr. Alfred, called an exception, and I told Winn-Dixie he had to act like an exception too. Specifically, I told him not to pick any fights with Mr. Alfred's cats or Miss Detweiler's little yappy Yorkie dog, Samuel. When Nixie looked up at me while I was telling him everything, and I swear he understood. Sit, I told him when he got to my trailer. He sat right down, and he had good manners. Stay here, I told him. I'll be right back. The preacher was sitting in the living room, working at the little fold-out table. He had paper spread all around him, and he was rubbing his nose, which always means he's thinking hard. Daddy, I said. He said back. Daddy, do you know how you always tell me that we should help those less fortunate than ourselves? He said. He rubbed his nose and looked around at his papers. Well, I said, I found a less fortunate at the grocery store. Is that right? He said. Yes, sir, I told him. I stared at the preacher really hard. Sometimes he reminded me of a turtle hiding inside its shell and there thinking about things and not ever sticking his head out into the world. Daddy, I was wondering, could he stay with us for a little while? Finally, the preacher looked up at me. Opal, he said, what are you talking about? I found a dog, I told him, and I want to keep him. No dogs, the preacher said. We've talked about this before. You don't need a dog. I know it, I said. I know I don't need a dog, but this dog needs me. Look, I said. I went to the trailer door and I hollered, Winn-Dixie! Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo is about a 10-year-old girl named Opal who finds a stray dog who's huge, ugly, and has a big personality. She finds this dog in a grocery store, his namesake, Winn-Dixie. Her and her father, who she calls the preacher, just moved to Naomi, Florida. Opal prays for new friends in her new city, and it ends up when Dixie helps Opal out to open her shell and to make some new, really great friends. Unfortunately, her father and their landlord do not want to keep Winn-Dixie and don't see what Opal sees in him. Do you think Opal will get to keep Winn-Dixie? You will have to read this book to find out. I think that because of Winn-Dixie is fitting for third graders, in my opinion, and I think it would widen most of the children's vocabulary at that age, and because it has a more complex storyline than they're used to. I think that this is a special book, and I hope everyone gets a chance to read this book.